Okay, now this is for the wives. This is the second directive for the wives, titled The Priority. And the verse here is Numbers 30, 10 through 12. But suppose a woman is married and living in her husband's home when she makes a vow or binds herself with a pledge. If her husband hears of it and does not object to it, her vow or pledge will stand. But if her husband refuses to accept it on the day he hears of it, her vow or pledge will be nullified, and the Lord will forgive her. God commands a wife to honor her own husband above any vow or pledge she might have made to anyone, even God himself. In this passage, God clearly states the priority of a wife toward her husband. The Lord does not want a wife to make any sacrifice or a vow or pledge to himself of her husband if her husband does not agree. I think this is absolutely amazing, almost shocking to realize that God says, I want you to put your husband, what he wants, above a sacrifice to God himself. Certainly a pledge sacrifice or a vow sacrifice, or sacrifice oftentimes in general. But you know, that's not inconsistent with Matthew chapter 5. Remember, he says, if you remember your brother has something against you and you're at the altar, it says leave the altar, go get reconciled, and then come again and make an offer to the Lord. So the Lord even puts your relationship with others as priority above being with him and serving him and honoring him. You can't honor him if you don't have a relationship with others that would be in your power, at least to go to him and try to be reconciled. And it's really somewhat the same principle here, except it's much stronger here, because vows in the Old Testament, it was always very detrimental if you did not keep a vow. But God says if your husband hears about it, you don't have to keep it if he doesn't want you to. He says on the same day, though. If he waits and belabors that, that's a different story. Anyhow, this is so amazing. Even after she makes a vow, quote, the Lord will forgive her if her husband does not want her to do whatever it is. However, it is important to note that not fulfilling a vow or pledge is not the same as obeying or disobeying a commandment of God. A vow is more of a sacrifice, something you're doing as an offering or sacrifice to the Lord. Any authority, be it civil, church, parent, or husband, must not be obeyed if they request anyone to do anything contrary to God and his word. Obeying God's commandments versus fulfilling what a wife might have pledged to God are two different things. But to do what this verse says by submitting to your husband instead of keeping a vow or pledge to God is in fact also obeying God, because that is what God says to do. Sacrificing anything to or for God is only acceptable to God if the wife is doing it with the full satisfaction and authority of her husband. Amazingly, God actually wants the wife to sacrifice directly to her husband, based on this verse, above what she might otherwise have sacrificed to God himself. For example, if the wife vows to sacrifice money or time or anything to God, and her husband who hears of it does not want her to, she is not to do it. We can't honor God if we don't honor who God has put over us. Conversely, we honor God whenever we submit in honor to the one God has put over us. Chapter 3. We're going to go to the next chapter. Okay.